Football season's back. Kickoff is just around the corner, and this year, you guys, is going to be unbelievable. What's up, everybody? I'm John Hoover, publisher at Sooners on SI, and Ryan Chapman, Randall Sweet are right here. They're going to help me break down Oklahoma's season opener against Temple. Guys, it's a massive season, an historic season for Oklahoma as they embark on their first year as a member of the Southeastern Conference, where, I've been reading about it and I've been watching videos, and all indications are that it just means more in the SEC. We'll see. OU's coming off a 10-3 record last year in year two under Brent Venables, and in addition to leaving behind almost 100 years of conference history in the Big Six, the Big Seven, the Big Eight, and the Big 12, this Oklahoma team, I think it feels like this Oklahoma team has a completely new vibe to it. You've got quarterback Jackson Arnold is new. The offensive line is completely new. The defense is better than the offense, which is certainly new at a place like Oklahoma. There are more than 50 newcomers on the roster. And you know what else? The big one, obviously, all three units, the offense, the defense, and even the special teams have new coordinators this year. And for the first time in program history, OU is playing a Friday night game. That's never happened. Crazy. 6 p.m., Owen Field. Be there or be square. We'll all be there, of course. And we're going to have the coverage for you all throughout the day. Oklahoma Sooners on SI.com. Let's take the plunge. This is where I ask the guys the tough questions. So the first question for you fellas. Who's got more pressure to perform this year? Is it the new defensive coordinator, Zach Alley? Or is it the new offensive coordinator, Jeff Lebby's replacement, Seth Littrell?
Yeah, I think that when you look at coordinators at Oklahoma, at least in modern college football, they're known for putting points on the board. And while there were a ton of frustrations amongst the fan base with Jeff Lebby for the last 2 years, they did put points on the board. Did they always put them on the board in the big games? Did they always have great bedlams, things like that? No, but I do think there'll be a lot of pressure on Seth Littrell, not because it's an unproven situation, kind of like Lebby, where it's the first time he wasn't under an offensive head coach, thing like that. I just think that Brent Venables has entrusted Seth Littrell, with Jeff Lebby's quarterback, right? Jackson Arnold, a year of development under Seth Littrell and Joe John Finley, but with all the attention Brent Venables pays to the defense, I think there's going to be a lot of pressure on Seth Littrell to manage the offense and be the CEO of the offense. He's got the background for it, former head coach, so he should be thinking about what's the defense can do, all that stuff. He's worked under a ton of guys. We've talked about it on the podcast. We've written about it all year long, all that stuff. So I think for Seth Littrell, there's going to be a lot of pressure on him, not necessarily to be a top 5 SP plus offense or to be number 1 in scoring offense, but does this group, A, have a quarterback who looks like he's playing to his 5-star potential, albeit there'll be a little rough around the edges in year 1 as a starter, but B, does this offense take care of the defense and help that group out? Because I think the defense, whether Zach Alley succeeds or not, they're projected to be the strength of this team as Oklahoma heads to the SEC.
Yeah, I think that I agree with Ryan. I would also pick and say that Seth Littrell is under more pressure this year, because if you look at the ranking officer over Seth Littrell, Brent Venables, he's a defensive-minded coach. If you're Seth Littrell, you are the expert on offense in this program right now. And so if things go wrong, it's kind of all on your shoulders. If you're Zach Alley, this is your first time being the defensive coordinator at a big-time Power 5 program, Power 4 program now, I should say, like Oklahoma. If things don't work out, one, obviously that's not good for Oklahoma, but you do kind of get a bit of a pass, especially in your first year. And two, you've got a guy like Brent Venables who you can lean on for help. If things do start to go awry, he can kind of take the reins and take over. And Seth Littrell doesn't have that. He is that guy on offense. Now, of course, he is more experienced, having been a head coach and an offensive coordinator many times before, but still, if Oklahoma's offense, which we project to be pretty good, they've got talent all over the field, especially at the skill position players, those receivers, the quarterback, even in the running back room, and at the tight end position now. With that talent group, if you can't succeed, then that's telling, I would say. Or I guess the fan base would be pretty upset. And I think that for that reason, Seth Littrell is going to have more pressure on him this season.
Maybe it's Littrell internally because he's had that taste of being a head coach and he wants to be a head coach again. He wants to perform and he wants to get that next job. I doubt it. I mean, he loves Oklahoma. He played at Oklahoma. He talked to us last December about this. I've been wanting to get back to this job, so maybe it's him for that reason that he wants to be a head coach again. But here's why I say it's Zach Alley. You've got the head coach who ran the defense and then basically ran off his defensive coordinator because he wasn't doing it right. And the head coach, who is one of the greatest defensive minds of our generation, right? Air quotes. He's handing it over to you. So I say it's Zach Alley. Oklahoma's defense last year wasn't great at a lot of things. They were good in the red zone. They were pretty good on third down. They generated a lot of negative plays, interceptions, turnovers, tackles for loss. But then Ted Roof, he's relieved of his duties, and Venables brings in a guy that everyone says is his clone. So Mini V, they call him, right? Zach Alley, Mini Venables. Here's the deal, guys. It's year 3, and we're talking about Brent Venables, again, one of the greatest defensive minds of the game today. Year 3 of his system. If this team is ever going to look like and act like its head coach is going to take on the form or the function of its head coach, the defensive coordinator needs to be that guy, right? I think with a new O-line and a new quarterback, and you've already lost one of your top receivers to a season-ending injury, Jaden Gibson, the offense probably shouldn't be expected to put up 40 or 50 points every weekend, but I think the defense needs to be much better. This is year 3. We need to see some real tangible growth and improvement by Brent Venables' defense. Second question for you guys. And I'll start us off with this one. I know the SEC schedule doesn't start for another month when Tennessee comes to town, but I do think Saturday is maybe a big step towards showing us what we can expect from this team. The SEC, remember, it's tough. OU was picked to finish 8th on the schedule. They were picked to finish 8th in the standings, and there are 6 teams on the schedule who start this season ahead of them in the polls. So that's crazy. That's crazy talk. So the question is this. What do you think a successful season looks like to Oklahoma? Is it somewhere in the SEC standings? Is it have to be double-digit wins? Is it a playoff spot? Is it just a bowl game in year 1? What would you consider a success in 2024? And I'll start this one. Last year, OU lost 2 games that, let's all agree, that they flat out should not have lost. They shouldn't have lost at Kansas. They should not have lost to Oklahoma State. They should have been 12-0 last year. Incredibly, right? Probably shouldn't have won the Texas game at the same time if we're saying shoulda, coulda. But that's a team that had 12-0 potential last year. They should have won both of those road games. But if they had just win one of those, guys, they're back in the Big 12 championship game. You're talking about a rematch with Texas in the Big 12 title game. You win that one, guess what? You're off to the playoff. That is success. That's why I think 8-4 for this team would be a letdown. I think 7-5 would be a failure. I really do. And I'm just saying, I've said it before on our podcast, 5-7 is not off the table for this team. That's how tough the schedule is. So if you go 9-3, finish maybe top 3 or 4 in the standings, I think that would be good, and you'd have a shot at the playoff. But, guys, this is Oklahoma. Brent Venables talks about it all the time. The standard is the standard. 10 wins is the standard. Actually, if you think about it, Bob Stoops and Lincoln Riley both averaged more than 10 wins, but they weren't playing in the SEC. So there it is. I'm calling it 10 wins, or this season can't be considered a successful season. Ryan, what do you think?
Well, if they go 8-4, the season could be better than most, which would also kind of fall under some of the Stoops stuff. I think that you're exactly right. This is Oklahoma. The standard is to make the college football playoff. That is the standard. I think 9-3 with this schedule will probably get you there. Frankly, when you look across college football, all that stuff, that's assuming the schedule lives up to it. If someone goes out and loses a quarterback week 1, things don't come together, but all that stuff. I do think, though, there is one sliver, there is one path where an 8-4, while not palatable and no one's going to love it, an 8-4 isn't going to be considered a 5-alarm fire in Norm by any means. And that's if you look at the schedule is really tough. You have a first-year starter. If Jack Arnold has a couple of freshman mistakes at Auburn and in Baton Rouge, and you just get beat by a better Texas team and a better Alabama team, but you beat Missouri, you stuff Eli Drinkwitz in a locker, whatever that version of that is. You go on the road and you beat the Lane train and derail it in Oxford. You show that growth throughout the year. I do think there is a pathway where an 8-4 could be labeled as begrudgingly yeah, okay, if you take a couple of those interceptions back, things like that, it would be okay. But I still think it's Oklahoma. Whether it's realistic, whether it's not, you got to be playing for national championships in Norman, or you're not going to be long for this world. And that's what Oklahoma is, regardless if they've been in the Southwestern Conference, the Big 8, the Big 12, and now the Southeastern Conference.
And I think that to really be considered a success this season, Oklahoma needs to finish top 5 in the SEC, somewhere around 9-3, 10-2, because to really be successful in your first season in the SEC, you need to go say, we went in and we made an impact. We were a real player in the SEC. We shook things up. You know, some of these teams that were on our schedule who we were projected to lose to, we took them out. We took them out of the SEC race. And again, even if you are finishing 4th or 5th in the SEC, you might not be making the college football playoff. But I guarantee 4th or 5th place in the SEC is right there on the cusp of making the college football playoff, especially if you're finishing 9-3, 10-2. Like Ryan said, I think if you're able to, pull off some of those top 25 victories, especially on the road, like whether that is, at Ole Miss, whether it's when Tennessee comes to town. I know Auburn's not in the top 25, but if you can go to Jordan-Hare, get a win there. If you're able to win a few of those big games along the way, even if you do lose 2 or 3, I think that that's still a success because you were a factor. You made an impact in the SEC your first year, and it's a solid building block to move forward with a young quarterback and a roster that's still going to be growing next year.
Oklahoma needs to finish this season and look over its shoulder and say, did you guys forget we're Oklahoma? You were picking us 6-6 and 8-4 and all this. We're Oklahoma. We don't do that. That's what Oklahoma needs to walk off the field last game of the year as they go into the playoff or the bowl game or whatever it is. And like Randall said, have an impact on the SEC. Make them know that you were in the ring with them. That's got to be a goal for this program moving forward. Thanks, fellas. Good job as always. If you guys have been a regular visitor to Oklahoma Sooners on SI.com, our wall-to-wall coverage of OU football is as good as it gets. And on game days, it's even better. We got the pregame coverage. We got the latest breaking news, up-to-date injuries, our world-famous in-game live blog, post-game interviews with players and coaches, including those new coordinators. Fingers crossed. You'll get our post-game reaction. We'll get the Sooners on SI podcast, certified fresh from the press box. So much more, and it is all free. Just keep it right here at Oklahoma Sooners on SI.com. For Ryan Chapman and Randall Sweet, I'm John Hoover. See you guys.